Hello and welcome back. You're through to Liberated Voices with myself, Intia Fatima, and my co-host.
Hussein Ali Akib Mahmood, and today we'll be talking to Akib Mahmood about the situation in Pakistan.
Welcome, Akib. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you very much for having me.
I think a lot of us saw the election. There's been a lot of press around it and different ideas. But PTI, one of the things that wasn't being picked up so much was that PTI was claiming that the election was rigged and that they got 179 or 180 seats. On what do they base this?
Okay, so the election was rigged, there's no doubt about that now. I mean, even now, which is what we're recording this on the 26th, we're almost 20 days after the election and the full documentation of the election has not been announced. The full results have not been announced. So clearly the ECP, the Election Commission of Pakistan, is still manipulating and manufacturing results to fit what they've announced officially. As far as PTI is concerned, or the PTI-backed independent candidates that they're concerned, they claim to have won 180 seats, and this is based on something called the Form 45. Now, the Form 45, in essence, is basically, it's a tabulation of every single polling station. Each constituency for the National Assembly, for the main parliament, has anywhere between 200 to 400 polling stations. On average, you could say something around 300, 350. Okay. And you have hundreds of thousands of people who vote in these polling stations. What happens is each polling station has a polling agent from each candidate. So each constituency could have anywhere between 2, 3 to 13, 14, 15 candidates. So then you've got 14 or 15 polling agents. You've got 2 election commission staff as well, which are the presiding officer and the assistant presiding officer. Now, their job is to collect all the ballot boxes at the end of the close of polling and empty them out in front of the polling agents, count them, separate the rejected votes and separate the votes for each candidate and count them in front of their polling agents, their respective polling agents. And then all of those polling agents attest to the fact that, yes, this count was legitimate. There was no sort of rigging, or there was no sort of ballot box stuffing, or our votes weren't unnecessarily or illegally rejected, etc., etc. And this count is accurate. Then what happens is all of those people, those polling agents, they all sign that Form 45 with those results next to those, with the votes polled next to each candidate's name. And the assistant presiding officer and the presiding officer, they sign it and they thumbprint it as well.
Okay.
So that is a biometric signature. And then say there's 10 candidates in one constituency, 10 copies are made. One is handed to each polling agent. And then another 2 copies are made, one for the assistant presiding officer, one for the presiding officer. And then a 3rd copy is made that is handed to the returning officer, and then when he gets all of those 300, 400, 250, however many polling stations there are for each constituency, when he gets them all together, he compiles the result on something called Form 47. Now, according to the Form 45s that PTI has, PTI candidates have in their possession, they have 1 2/3 majority in the National Assembly. They've won a supreme majority in the KPK Assembly, and they've won a simple majority in the Punjab Assembly. So essentially, they've got a 2/3 mandate from the public, according to those forms. And those forms are notoriously difficult to fake, because, as I said, it's got the confirmation and attestation of anywhere between 5, 10, 15 polling agents, and the signatures and the thumbprints of all the presiding officers. The Form 47 is just a simple sort of computer Excel sheet, which just says this person got this many total votes in this constituency. Anyone can make that up.
So it's not a very legitimate way of confirming that many votes have been.
Yeah, so basically what's happened is, so for example, there's one very famous case. There's a lady called Rehana Dar, who's a candidate for PTI from the city of Sialkot. Now, she had to become a candidate because her sons were abducted and tortured and made to leave the party under duress. And she stood against PMLN stalwart, who's also a major figure for the establishment. and he's usually the defense minister or the foreign minister for Pakistan whenever PMLN are in power. Khwaja Asif, his name is, and every single television station was getting the Form 45 results as they were coming in, and they were compiling the results. And the TV stations on the night, on election night, after polling closes, as soon as they start getting the Form 45 results per polling station, they start putting them out, and they start saying XYZ candidate is leading, and this person is second, and this is based on the result of 13 out of 300 polling stations. And then they're like, okay, now this person's lead has gone up to 10,000 votes, and this is based on 200 out of 300 polling stations. So she was leading up until 95% of the polling stations. She was leading by 50,000 votes. So basically, it was impossible for her to have lost that seat. But when the Form 47 came out, so basically at 1 a.m. UK time, roughly, which is about 5 o'clock in the morning in Pakistan, the military establishment said, okay, stop these results. So the results stopped coming in because they realized that, okay, PTI candidates have won a 2/3 majority. They stopped all the results, and they basically forced the returning officers to issue fake and manipulated and manufactured, utterly false manufactured Form 47s, which is the provisional result of all of the polling stations compiled together. So she ended up losing about 30,000 votes, and her opponent ended up gaining about 40,000 votes in his Form 47, and he's been declared the winner. So that's what's happening.
That's really interesting, because obviously you seem to know a lot more about the way the system works. But then, what is the point of having a Form 45 and a Form 47 if the Form 45 is not going to be listened to?
Exactly. So the idea is, in an ideal world, the Form 45, the reason for the Form 45 to exist, and the reason why it has all of these signatures and all of these thumbprints and all of these sort of, attestations to it, etc., is that to make it difficult to rig. Because, and then, so the other thing is, so now it's become a problem, because people who ran in those constituencies as candidates and who lost and who came third, fourth, fifth, whatever, they all have the same Form 45s that the PTI-backed candidates have. And they're saying, we lost, but we also attest to the fact that PTI won. And this result on Form 47 is wrong. So basically, what we're seeing here is daylight robbery. That's what's happening. So normally what would happen is that all the Form 40... So Imran Khan has a history of doing this. He's never satisfied, let's just put it that way. So, when he was playing cricket, he was angry and upset about biased umpiring. So he fought against the system, and he made them change it to have neutral umpires. So he was the person who did that. So he's all about fair play and what's good cricket. He's all about that. So he's been arguing and railing and protesting against rigging and election manipulation and stuff like that since 2013, which was the first big election that he took part in fully as a party. In that election, he got nowhere because obviously he wasn't aware of the mechanics of how the election system works in Pakistan. So he knew that there was something wrong with these results, but he couldn't prove it because he didn't have those Form 45s. His polling agents, his party, bureaucracy, they were not trained, and they did not understand the technicalities, and they were like, they were just euphoric that we've won X amount of seats. So he didn't win the election, but he was definitely the second largest party, so he would have been the leader of the opposition. But he lost that position because his party did not have the Form 45s for that election. This was in 2013. So he learned that lesson. So then in the next election, which is this one, he said, look, whatever happens, you have to get the Form 45. Even if you have to fight with the presiding officer, you have to get your copy of your Form 45. Because when we take this to court, or to tribunal, or to the Supreme Court, or wherever, they're going to ask us, what's the evidence that you have that you won on this constituency?
Sure.
So he's got to have that. So he's got that.
Just coming in on that. So they've got the evidence.
Yeah.
What's the next step for them?
So the next step is they try to go to the high courts, to the respective high courts in each province. And they said, no, you have to go to the election commission. You have to complain to the returning officer who actually manipulated the results in the first place. under duress, or some of them did it willingly because they thought, you know, what the hell, the military's in charge anyway, and they want to bring this party into power, PMLN. If we help them now, we'll get good postings and we'll get good perks and privileges, etc., etc. So you know, the future's bright for us if we play ball. Some of them resisted and they were forced. Some of them resisted and they resigned. Some of them were removed because they refused to do what they were told, and they were replaced on the night itself. So that's what's happening now. The thing is, those form 47s, there's no way that they can be legitimized, and there's no way that they can be substantiated from the form 45s. So the returning officers are dismissing all of PTI's complaints. They're just like, there's videos of PTI candidates sitting in the returning officers' offices in appeals and saying, here's the form 45s, count them, add them up, and issue the result of form 47 based on that. And they're just ignoring them, like they're not even looking up from their desk. They're just looking straight down and just writing fake form 47s in which PMLN or whoever the establishment has told them to, you know, select and that constituency is winning. So after this, they're going to go to tribunal, which is basically 2 high court judges are going to sit in a tribunal. The problem is the scale of the rigging is so huge. It's literally they've stolen half the election. That's what they've done here. The scale of the rigging is so huge, and these tribunals, they're designed for like minor disputes or, you know, 1 or 2 constituencies here and there. They're not designed for 90 constituencies of the National Assembly. They're not designed for 100 plus constituencies of Punjab.
Are they going to have to go through every constituency one at a time?
Yeah, one at a time. And also the other thing is, you know, people from 2013, they just got their decision from the tribunal like last year.
Oh my gosh.
People from 2018 elections, they got their tribunal decisions this year. Like 6 years later, 5 years later. So that's what's happening. So people, you know, 10 years later. So basically, if you go into tribunal, there'll be another election before that, by the time the result from the tribunal comes back. So what's happening now is it's a very dirty and sort of murky game of trying to force the Supreme Court to take notice of this and basically take extraordinary steps and step in. Because the thing is, you can't have people who literally won 17 seats in the National Assembly rule over a party which won 180.
Exactly.
Now they're going to have a prime minister, the party that only had 17 seats. And the party that had 180 seats are going to have to sit in opposition for 5 years. That's what you're telling them to do. That's not going to work. So what you're doing is you're causing a rupture in the system. The Supreme Court has to step in at some stage. So that's what PTI wants to do.
In terms of the Supreme Court's power, when they are to make a ruling, what would that look like?
So the Supreme Court, so right now the whole system is rigged against Imran Khan. So the Supreme Court is run by the Chief Justice of Pakistan, which is a guy called Qazi Faiz Issa. Now he has some sort of personal animosity against Imran Khan, and he has unanswered questions about, you know, properties in the UK that belong to his wife and his children, and he hasn't been able to justify or explain, you know, where that money came from and how those properties were purchased, how much tax was paid on that income and that wealth that purchased that property, etc., etc., from his wife. During Imran Khan's tenure, a reference was filed against this judge for basically corruption. He got out of it on a technicality,
right? And
now he's the Chief Justice, and now he's got an axe to grind with Imran Khan. So he took away Imran Khan's party's symbol, which left them all as independents. Now they don't have access to the quota of reserved seats. So there's there's 266 seats which have a general election on them, and then the remaining 70 seats, they're split up based on the proportionality of how many seats you won in the election, and those are for women and minorities. So his party doesn't exist as a political entity in the system right now because of the decision of this Chief Justice. Again, this Chief Justice is also the one who approved the Election Commission's decision to place members of the bureaucracy as the returning officers and the district returning officers.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, because they're clearly politically biased. Like these people were literally imprisoning PTI political workers and leaders in the day, and in the night they were supposed to be running the election. So they were literally imprisoning these people like on like administrative orders of like, you know, causing a nuisance or whatever, or maintenance of public order and stuff like that. And they were detaining these people for 3 months at a time. And this went on for like 2 years now that it's been going on. And then these very same people are claimed to be unbiased and neutral and are going to conduct a free and fair election. That's not how it works. But Qazi Faizi, the Chief Justice, he legitimized that by his decisions. So now eventually that's going to go to him, but there's sort of little technical issues that are going to come up for Qazi Faizi, because not the entire Supreme Court is under his control. And you know, his ally judges, one of them is going to retire on the 11th of March. That's a significant date, because then there's a committee, there's a 3-member committee, the Chief Justice and the 2 senior most judges. They decide what bench is going to listen to which case. And so it's possible that he could be outnumbered on that committee by 2 to 1 come 11th of March. And it's possible that PTI might stand a fair chance of a fair hearing in the Supreme Court.
So one of the not the Chief Justice, but one of his the other people on the committee, one of them is retiring on the 11th of March. What about the other one?
So the other one will become the second senior most judge, and then the Chief Justice himself is retiring in October.
Okay.
And then the second most will become the Chief Justice.
Okay.
Yeah. So they just move up along in seniority.
If it doesn't work out in March, does that mean that in October potentially when? It's
possible, but you see that you've got a problem, because the establishment itself is very pro or very anti-Imran Khan right now, because he's become too powerful for the establishment to control. If he comes to power, or his party comes to power, they can make changes to the system, and radical changes to the system. They can change the constitution because they have a 2/3 majority. They can have a majority in the Senate as well. So they can get laws passed, and you know, they have a huge public mandate and huge public support as well at the moment. So they have a huge amount of political capital to burn through as well, if it comes down to it. So that's the problem that the establishment has.
So to change the constitution, you need 2/3 majority, or okay, because I know that no government apparently had I think you said last time you were on here, that no government has ever had an actual majority at all.
Yeah, so what you need to change the constitution, you need a 2/3 majority, not just in the national parliament. You need a 2/3 majority in the provincial assemblies as well. So all the provinces have to agree as well.
Oh, okay.
So basically, so in essence, you need other parties to join in as well, and
Is
there
that
has to be a consensus to change the constitution.
But would that have been likely? Say somewhere like Sindh.
It would have been possible. It would have been possible to do that, because one of the provinces is entirely controlled by the military,
Okay.
which is Balochistan.
Mhm.
KPK, Imran Khan has like
Yeah.
80-85%. His party has seats in that, and then Punjab as well, with the PPP in Sindh and PPP in Punjab together, they could have changed the constitution. So it's a possibility. How likely that is, I'm not sure, but it's something that the establishment doesn't really want, because the current constitution has a lot of contradictions and a lot of fissures in it, which provide space for the establishment to play their games and play politicians off each other and control the bureaucracy and
get out on technicalities.
Yeah, and you know, use judges to do X, Y, Z and achieve their goals. So that's essentially, they don't want the system to change.
So what's the situation with protests? Is there still protests going on? Because I remember seeing some big ones just after the election.
No. So basically what happened was when Imran Khan was arrested on the 9th of, well, he was abducted on the 9th of May last year, he was in court, presented for a bail hearing, for a bail application in the Islamabad High Court. And paramilitary units of the Rangers, they broke into the premises of the court and essentially abducted him on a warrant that he wasn't even aware of, on an arrest warrant that he wasn't even aware of. And that caused sort of riots across the country. Now, some people suspect that there was a lot of anger against the military, and some of that anger came out against sort of military buildings and or military owned you know, instruments or stuff like that. What really happened will need a thorough investigation. PTI people claim that the military orchestrated the whole event, because obviously PTI has been protesting for a year before that, and they've never attacked the military until that day. And the whole thing seemed a little off. I mean, there's videos of people coming in military trucks in civilian clothes, coming off the back of those lorries and then attacking military installments and, you know, military buildings and stuff like that. And then obviously PTI is blamed for that. And a lot of the leaders and a lot of vocal party members have been in prison on those charges. Like they haven't been convicted yet, but they've been in prison for almost a year now for those events. And every time they get bail on one accusation, another accusation that they were, you know, some women are in prison for 9-10 months now for, you know, they've been accused of arson and damaging public property, etc., in like 3-4 different parts of Pakistan on the same day at the same time. Like, you know, Islamabad, Peshawar, and Lahore, which are like, you know, hundreds of miles apart on the same day at the same time. So it's ridiculous, basically. And so yeah, so they're still in prison. Obviously, Imran Khan himself is in prison. So it's really difficult to get out there and protest. People do come out and protest, but it's not on the scale that we saw before. And really, Imran Khan wasn't really protesting then, he was holding huge rallies. So he was holding huge, like, they were like protests, but they were massive rallies, really.
So I'm just wondering now, because I know we don't have a long time left for the episode, but to me, it's very clear that it's all happening very blatantly. They don't care about who sees what, whether it's, you know, in front of the public or not. So internationally, this must be having some sort of impact, or is the global community just sort of used to seeing this from Pakistan?
Yeah, no, so what's happening is it's quite interesting because only yesterday, Matthew Miller, the spokesperson of the US State Department, he tweeted out something about Belarus and the elections in Belarus and how the US State Department rejects these rigged elections because 1,400 political prisoners were taken and you know, manipulation and irregular elections, etc., and we don't accept them and we don't accept the results, which is all good and well, but he's been asked consistently for the last many months about Pakistan, where there's over 10,000 political prisoners, many of them females, the most blatant pre and post-election rigging, and just total daylight robbery. Like these people have the proofs in their hands and presented it to the international media. That not only that, they're corroborated by other candidates from opposing parties, religious parties usually, that no, these people did actually win.
I mean, what more can they do?
Exactly, and the US State Department and Matthew Miller are like, oh, we haven't made that determination yet. So essentially, what's happening here is that it's just more evidence that Imran Khan was toppled, his government was toppled at the behest of the United States, at the behest of the Joe Biden administration, and you know, the cipher case, the cipher that Imran Khan received from his from the US ambassador, from the Pakistani ambassador to the US, proves true. It rings true because it says in it very clearly that you must remove Imran Khan and all will be forgiven. And if you don't, it will be very tough going ahead for Pakistan. So essentially, as long as Imran Khan is out of the picture, the US is just like umming and ahhing and saying, oh, we haven't really seen it and we can't really decide, and it's for the Pakistani courts.
I think with everything that we've seen in Palestine, so obviously in our faces, and still they're just willing to.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it's the US.
The same.
It's the US agenda. Like when it's in their favor, they'll just ignore it, and when it's not in their favor, then they'll kick up a huge hue and cry about it. I mean, how many times did they do press conferences, the US State Department, about Navalny in Russia? And how many press conferences have they done about Imran Khan, who was in prison even though he was on bail for months? He was on bail and his trial was being conducted in prison because no one has actually seen Imran Khan since he was shifted from one prison to another, and even then that was a blurry photo of like the back of his head or the side of his head from an armored vehicle.
Yeah.
What's been the situation with the IMF then? Because I heard there's a loan.
Yeah, so basically the IMF in I think it was May or June last year, something like that. It was last year basically. The IMF gave Pakistan a standby agreement, and for that they went to every single political party, including Imran Khan. They actually visited Imran Khan and they said, "Look, you need to agree to this. All political parties need to agree to this. That we're going to give you an emergency loan." And Imran Khan said, "Look, I only have one condition: that you give us free and fair elections, and then I'll agree to that." So they said, yes, that's fine, free and fair elections on time, etc., etc. Even then, the elections were delayed, and there was rigging, and now he's in this situation. Now that standby agreement has finished, this new government has to go and negotiate a new deal with the IMF, right? Now, the US or the IMF have not given Venezuela money and has not given them a deal because of their inverted commas election rigging over there. But they seem perfectly happy to adjust with Pakistan. So Imran Khan is planning on writing the letter. I think he's written it already to the IMF to tell them that, look, these people do not represent the people of Pakistan. These people are not democratically elected. We had this agreement with the IMF itself that we would only sanction any deal with the IMF as long as we are given free and fair elections. And that agreement has been broken. So in essence, what he's saying is that if we have come back to power, we're not going to accept this money that you're giving. Yeah, this money that you're giving to these people, you have to go and get it from them, not the people of Pakistan and not the government of Pakistan. The state is not going to accept this responsibility should he ever come back to power again.
But other than that, this letter won't hold any power or make any difference, will it?
No, it won't. I mean, Imran Khan's sitting in prison serving 31 years sentence, right? He can't dictate to the IMF. But this is important to write because he needs to, he can't say after the fact, that election was rigged. Like, well, you should have told us.
And how stable is the government then?
I mean, I don't see this government lasting. I mean, this government has less legitimacy than the previous one. And that was, that was teetering on the brink every single day. This government is going to lurch from crisis to crisis. I don't see it lasting more than a year, tops.
Are we looking at lots of riots?
It depends. I mean, it depends if Imran Khan, how the establishment and how the government deal with Imran Khan, how they cope with the dictation of the IMF, because obviously things are going to get very, very tough for the common man in Pakistan. Inflation is going to increase. Gas and electricity rates are going to go through the roof. They're already very high. They're already extremely high. The rupee is going to suffer against the US dollar. Imports are going to suffer. Exports are going to suffer. So the economy is facing dire straits. I mean, they're on the verge of bankruptcy. And these people who have been imposed in Pakistan, I don't think, much less that they're capable of dealing with this, I don't think they lack the complete awareness of what exactly the Herculean task that Pakistan actually faces. They can't even, get that in their head. They can't encompass that in their minds.
If they can't comprehend it, how can they possibly think to tackle it?
Yeah, they have. I mean, they're just here to make money. They're literally just there. They're there. They're going to go to Saudi Arabia. They're going to sell bits and bobs off to UAE of one state enterprise or another mining project, etc., and make some money. They're going to pocket some of that. They're going to throw some of that at the people, and they're not going to make any structural reforms. There's nothing going to be, sustainable for the economy. They're not going to do anything sustainable for the economy.
So come March 11th, if things don't work out, what can we expect? Is it even worth us being hopeful for?
No, I think there's always hope, because I think at some point even the establishment is going to realize that these people are not going to work. They are actually incompetent as well. So you've got to add that into it as well. It's not just that they're not aware and they can't comprehend the task that lies ahead. they are also completely incompetent. Like and the past 16 months of their government is testament to that. They failed absolutely miserably on every single metric.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very lovely episode with Akib Mahmood. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You can catch us on the next episode of Liberated Voices and find us on all social media platforms.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Take care. Have a great evening.
Assalamu alaikum.